Hi, I'm Brainerd Carey, Director of Praxis Center for Aesthetics and Online School for Artists. And today I want to talk about being a self-taught artist and marketing on your own terms. So, self-taught artist is something that we hear a lot about, right? It's a term that's out there a lot in the art world. And what does that mean? It means essentially that you didn't go to college for making art, that you didn't go through an academic program for making art. Initially, it meant also someone who's kind of unaware of the art world as we know it in contemporary art. So that would mean people who are, making art entirely in isolation, developing their own type of language, and then presenting it to the world. But self-taught artist now is a much broader term, and by that, kind of isolated, I mean things like folk art, things that are that somehow don't even seem to be like art you've ever seen before. Um, so, to give a few examples of that, there would be someone like Bill Trailer, who's an artist that was descendant of slaves and was making art on cardboard and drawings that were very unusual, sort of shadowy, kind of stick-like figures. But there's many other artists that there's an entire art fair called the Outsider Art Fair, which is all artists who are self-taught, and that range is huge, from people like Bill Trailer to people, contemporary artists who are doing things that seem a bit visionary, that are doing things that are really out of the norm, that aren't what you'd see in a typical gallery. Sometimes they're obsessive, different types of work of art, but that's a whole area now. So as a self-taught artist, if that's how you identify as a self-taught artist, and you could or not, but if you see yourself as self-taught, how do you market yourself? Is there any difference in how you market yourself? Um, yeah, there is. In one way, it's really wide open, right? If you're operating outside the art world, which really means outside the academic sphere, what colleges and some galleries and museums are promoting. If you're making something that's totally your own vision, then you don't have to go by any of the rules that anybody's talking about, including me, about how to sell or promote your art. Anything is possible because you're no longer playing by the same set of rules. So, you see this with kind of historic works, Watts Towers in LA, people who are doing kind of sculptures on their land or outside that become something sort of that nobody asked for, that's monumental in some ways, but is really a whole different way of putting work out into the world. So how do you market that? There's all the traditional forms that I talk about in this channel, but also you can make up something yourself. You can walk down the streets holding a sign that says, "I have art for sale." You could sit on the street selling art, right? That's not frowned upon, right? You see that in New York City all the time, and doesn't mean this is a homeless artist. This means, it's a very direct approach, and it's an approach that a typical artist wouldn't take. But it's approach that often works for many artists. And in New York City, like other cities, you'd have to check. Often, if you're selling your own art, you don't need a sales permit to do that on the street. This is kind of a loophole that's in New York. That's why you see people sometimes in Starbucks setting up their art in a window. There was one guy that I know that draws all the time in Starbucks. He leans the art into the window so people can see it as they walk by, and they can come in and buy art for him. Has a little sign next to it that says "for sale." Starbucks doesn't stop him. That's a very kind of out of the box way of doing it. The rules don't apply to him because he's not operating in the way that everybody else is. It's nice that Starbucks let him do that. You could easily do that somewhere else in a kind of low-key way. But this opens up a whole world of possibilities, right? It's not just that you have to be on the street or in Starbucks. The way you send out emails, the way, depending on where your home or apartment is, how you decorate it, how you show what's possible. I mean, think about how people who are fortune tellers market their work, how do they market that? How do they get you to come to their teeny storefront or their apartment and get a tarot card reading or a palm reading from them? Well, sometimes it's the storefront itself, right? It's the home itself. But also, I've seen readers leave pieces of paper on the subway or other places around. There's, put up notices in different places. You have to be a little bit creative, right? But again, there's no rules. They're trying to do it in a way that's free. So, as an artist, as a self-taught artist, if that's how you know define yourself and your work, the possibilities for what you can do and the ways in which you can do it are vast, because there's so many ways that you can get your work out into the world. So I hope this is helpful, because the way to research more of this is to look at something like outsider art fair or outsider art galleries or self-taught art galleries, and you'll see a little bit about how those artists are promoted. There's often a kind of a story to them, right? A kind of an outrageous story, but not always. But sometimes a story comes along with it because there's no context for this artist. So that's a good way to kind of look at and approach those kinds of things, which I'd suggest trying, because as a self-taught artist, again, if this is how you feel like you define yourself, suddenly there's a world of opportunities that are completely creative, and all your tactics for marketing can be totally inventive, from signs on your car, bike, skateboard, walking down the street, your clothes, to setting up in Starbucks or on the street, or telling stories, or coming to other events. It's just endless what you could do. So, and of course, as an artist that doesn't identify as self-taught, you could also do these things. But I just wanted to focus on those who feel that because they're self-taught, because they haven't gone to college, that maybe there isn't a way into the art world for them, or maybe they need those accolades to be taken seriously or to market their work. And that simply is not the case. Self-taught artists, as I've said, are now subjects of entire art fairs, like the Outsider Art Fair, as well as galleries that promote themselves as galleries that specialize in self-taught art or outsider artwork or visionary artwork. Those are all really kind of synonyms for what I'm talking about. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and I'll try to answer them. And if you have suggestions for other topics you'd like to see addressed here, just put that in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get to it.